Good morning, class. I am going to be sharing with you some things about ethical and legal issues and some more in-depth details about theory with group as you're getting ready and hopefully already starting to record your own groups. Hopefully you're feeling good about that. I'm looking forward to watching your videos. I've enjoyed reading your discussion board posts, and I think it seems like you guys are learning a lot from Yalom, which he is like the father of group. So I'm sure I've said that before, but it's pretty accurate. That's who he is. That's what he's known for. And so, watching those live demonstrations will probably be helpful for you as you prepare to record your group sessions. I've appreciated, you guys have brought, I know with the discussion boards, they have you bring in the faith components. And, when we think of Christ and who he is and who he was, like being God, but man here on earth, he technically didn't need people. And he was the perfect demonstration of picking 12 people to walk alongside him, one to continue the journey after he went back to heaven, ascended back to heaven. But he picked 12 people to live in the context of community with. They ate together, they served together, they went on trips together, they had a same mission, they had a same drive to accomplish certain tasks. And so it's pretty amazing when you look at all that Jesus did in the context of with other people. And that's not in counting the many women who were part of their ministry and things. And so he really did show us kind of a group atmosphere. And so just something to be reminding yourself of as we're looking into, how iron sharpens iron and how a cord of three strands can't be broken. Like there's something about there being more than one person. Like we're not meant to be all alone on this world without anybody else. And so there can be power in numbers with people, but those numbers can also bring us down. And so that's where we as a group leader have a lot to facilitate because we kind of control that atmosphere that's talked about in some of your posts that I've read. So again, I've appreciated reading your posts. I know for some of you, like for the early ones, the way the rubric is kind of funky and it doesn't translate the points over to the other side. So for a few of you that was funky for, I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. So I think I've corrected those errors. I try to get on top of that pretty quickly. And I look forward to reading your discussion boards this week. You have one more that will be due at the end of week 3. And then, of course, week 4 is when your group assignment is due. So enough said on that. That's just some logistics and some overview. So legal and ethical issues. Okay, so group is unique, different than individual therapy because it's just between the therapist and client. So if there's a breach of confidentiality, it's usually on the therapist's behalf, right? There's nobody else to blame in the room. When it's with group, then we have another whole set of issues because we can't control what people say outside of group. We have no control over those things. And so it's important that we are mindful of that when we are going over rules and guidelines of group with the group members. Now, for some of you, you'll do types of groups in the future where maybe you interview people beforehand. And when you interview people, you kind of go over some of the limits of confidentiality and things of that nature. For others of you, people may show up and then you fill out forms and you talk about it maybe each week. But really stressing the importance of confidentiality. One, they can get kicked out of group if they breach confidentiality, and or they could have probably some legal trouble themselves if whatever their breach was significant enough. When you think about some of these like rehab places or maybe more inpatient settings, you could have people in your facility that could be people of some affluency, could be famous. They're people too that have issues too, and they want to feel like whatever it is they're experiencing is private. They're entitled to that privacy. And so just to make sure, like, again, confidentiality is respected, and it's respected because everyone wants that space. They want that floor in that group to feel safe, to feel like they can share what they need to share and not be that information leaving and telling people. Plus, you never know. The world is such a small place at times, and you never know who someone could know that knows that person. And so, we just have to really stress that in these groups because, again, like obviously as a clinician, we're only going to break confidentiality if we're mandated, as mandated reporters, which is harm to self, others, elder abuse, child abuse. But like I said, we can't control a room full of people, or we can't control maybe 10 individuals who go home and have people that they live with or share life with. Okay. So, we just want to make sure that, again, we're culturally competent, that we're mindful of things. Nowadays there's a lot of stress on this. So just making sure we're, as it pertains to the group, some of this stuff may come up, some of it may not, but that we're respectful of people's, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientation, religious affiliations, their values. We're allowed to not agree with each other. That's okay. But navigating that, obviously you can't have anybody slandering anybody or saying any sort of slurs or, inappropriate comments. And so just being conscientious of that in group is really important. Obviously we want to toe the line on that. We want to make sure, like, again, group is a safe place. We control that. If someone in your group is not a safe person, then we need to control that. Okay. So that's really, really important. So again, going over some of the important things of group with members, like what it is, the goals, how it's going to work. So everyone knows expectations. When people know expectations, they'll better understand boundaries. It's important the first session. Now, if you have an open group, which means anyone can come whenever, you might go over this each session because you never know if someone's new there. I think it's a good rule of thumb to kind of do that because it really solidifies, like, this is what our group's about. These are our goals, da, 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 da. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. It could take less than 5 minutes to go over that. And maybe each one popcorns, like they sporadically say what the rules are and kind of go from there. I think that's a great way to communicate information, reiterate the importance, and have everyone saying it aloud. Just really solidifies these are our rules, this is our structure, all that kind of stuff, especially for new members, but also to remind the old members. Okay. And again, I think an expectation allows people to know, like, is this a good thing for me to be a part of or not? If I'm not in a place where I can show up on time, if I'm not in a place where I can commit 9 weeks, whatever that looks like, then they can make those decisions before group versus making those decisions later. Okay. Okay, so groups where there's involuntary members, those sometimes are court mandated groups. Those are groups like co-parenting groups sometimes, domestic violence groups sometimes. Sometimes there's sexual abuse groups for predators, pedophiles. Those groups are sometimes court mandated. Trying to convey that you can get a lot out of group, even if it's something you have to do. I mean, if you're going to have to be here, might as well get the most out of it. So making sure as a leader, like, yeah, that's a hard way to start. Maybe if everyone's kind of resistant. As with the co-parenting group, sometimes it's like, there could be people at odds with each other in the room. There's some hostility, but the goal is, like, if we're going to be here, let's get the most out of it, and trying to convey that to the members. I think it's really important. Again, making sure that they do what they're expected to do in that group. And if they don't do it, then they're going to have the consequences of that. And that's just their choices, and I know that's hard, but that's important, that we convey what everyone is supposed to do, and that they have clear idea of what's expected of them to get whatever credit or to get whatever point system or however that works with whatever they're mandated to do, and whatever that requirement is. So that's just something to know. We can't hold people hostage in groups, so people are allowed to leave. And that's okay, but just making sure what that process looks like, and like what a group member is committing to from the beginning, I think, like I've said, is really important. It'd be important for the person to maybe inform the group leader and the members. Maybe it's just not a good season in their life. Maybe they thought they had more time. Maybe it's too triggering for them. They're doing their own psychotherapy. Maybe they've decided to go inpatient, whatever that looks like. It's like important for everyone in the group to be able to mourn that, because it is like a big deal. Okay. It could be a big change. So again, I mentioned this, I'm going to go over this briefly, but confidentiality, again, this is the foundation of a working group. Leader, That's your job, is to define what that is. Members need to be taught it. Okay, leaders need to talk to members about it, and leaders need to remind members of various points in a group of the importance of maintaining confidentiality. That's on you guys. That's our job. We are we're the holder of the kingdom here. Okay, so you need to set the tone with this and the importance of this, because I think if your group feels safe, they'll thrive. They'll get the most out of group if they can thrive and they can feel safe to talk about things. And if we really communicate that with the group of people that you have, then I think you're really going to see the group thrive and grow and really share and get the most out of the experience, versus if they feel like they can't. So you guys are going to be demonstrating some group techniques in your videos, and so I wanted to hone in on this. So these are interventions you're doing to help facilitate like some growth or depth in a group setting, right? So you're wanting to use, like, let's say a breathing technique if you're doing like an anxiety group, or you're wanting to maybe talk about some list making to help with maybe an ADD group or something of that nature. Maybe something like cognitive behaviorally with stress management. The whole point of the technique is that it will be useful for whatever the topic is. Okay, so you need to make sure that techniques are most useful when they evolve from whatever's happening in the group. So depending on what part of the group you're in, at the beginning part, the middle part, the end part, that the intervention makes sense for where you're at. Okay, so sometimes we can get so eager on interventions and we're like, oh, let's try this. And it's like, okay, but this is not the point. The point is that it serves a purpose. So you want to make sure whatever interventions you're going to do in group, that they make sense for the group. It makes sense for the type of group, the where the group members are at, the diversity of the group, that the members are trusting you as the leader, and that the group is cohesive, or there's trust among them. Now, there might be interventions you do at the beginning of the group that are maybe really basic, kind of lighthearted, just something to get the group going. That's okay. Like, you could have different levels of depth of intervention, right? And that's where we have, like working phases of group. We have more of an initial phase of group. We have, like, again, a concluding, ending, final phase of group. So you could be in a different phase and have interventions. You just want to make sure they make sense for whatever phase of group you're in. And, like, let's say you do a group all the time. You're like, I know it like the back of my hand. I know this group. Well, but every group has different people. And so even though you know the group so well and you know the content so well, like, if you have a group that is really struggling to be cohesive, maybe because of a few people or whatever, they may not be ready for certain interventions or certain techniques, and you might have to pace it differently, or maybe have to re-strategize. That's where, if you have a co-leader, you can talk about it. That's okay. Like, group is a living thing. It's a living organism. You have to be willing to flex and bend. Okay. So don't be disappointed by that, but be willing to work and navigate through that. Okay. A multicultural lens. Consider all dimensions of their identity, regardless of your theoretical perspective. Beware of the power you possess as a leader. And I think, it's like, it's not a dictatorship, right? Like, we're not just telling these people what to do and that sucks to be you kind of thing. But it is this whole concept of, we need to be aware of the people that are around us and how to meet them where they're at. Be aware of the struggles that they're dealing with. Be aware of maybe the challenges outside of their even socioeconomic status, right? You could have it very diverse with very different socioeconomic statuses. And you want to be aware of that and be mindful, of some of those things, because, again, priorities change depending on somebody's ability to get to things. Okay, so just something to be mindful of when doing group, and taking in all the members and where they're at. And I know this can seem very overwhelming, like, we just meet these people, how do we know? Sometimes, again, you'll do some background stuff and you'll get to know, and it's not going to be perfect and not always going to be super simple or easy, but it is something good to do, is to be mindful of where these people are at and what's going on for them. Okay. So there's different kinds of approaches to group. You could do psychodynamic, experiential, cognitive behavioral, postmodern approaches. All probably some of you might work at facilities where they tell you what your approach and what your style is going to be because it's more controlled. Other places, like for example, at my group practice, we are starting a postpartum group for mothers who are postpartum. And it's up to that clinician to decide how she wants to run the group. I don't really care too much. Obviously, I want it to be legal and ethical because that's most important. But I don't. I want it to be up to her discretion since she's leading it and designing it. It's her baby. So literally, I mean figuratively, literally. And so, depending on what kind of place you're at, you have to be respectful of like the model and the way they wish for you to run the group. You might have more freedom at certain places, you might have less. And so I think it's really talking with your supervisor to really navigate what style and approach they're looking for as you begin this journey of group so that you have a better understanding, like what that means to the group, knowing the theory and or the style. Obviously, knowing your material and your content is going to be super important since you're going to be basically kind of like teaching it. You need to understand it, and that's really important because otherwise people might get a vibe about that, like I don't feel like you know what you're talking about. So especially if it's not material you designed, you want to make sure that you understand it to convey it the best you can to the group. All these things matter because again, these people are looking to you to kind of guide them through this journey, and you want to kind of know the road ahead. You're kind of like I was going to say the Alexa, but like, on my phone, I use the Safari maps. Like you're kind of doing the little, the directions, right? But sometimes there's traffic. Sometimes there's a hazard and we have to get around something. But as a leader, you're able to see those things and kind of navigate through them. Whereas the group members are just the passengers in the car and they may not know what's going on. Okay. So a little analogy there, but I hope this is helpful for you. I know you guys have a lot on your plate. We have discussion board for week 3. We don't have one week 4 because you guys are working on your videos, which I will say those will take me a little bit of time to grade. So don't be alarmed, but they're just long, so I have to watch them. But I'm looking forward to seeing your work, and I appreciate you guys working hard on getting those groups. I'm sorry I sounded so like strict about it from the beginning, but I needed you guys to know because it's hard to come up with people sometimes depending on where you live and all those dynamics. And I wanted to make sure it was on your radar. So anyhow, I hope you have a fantastic week. Look forward to reading more of your hard work.